1 out of every 5 students report being bullied. 13% were made fun of, called names, or insulted. They were pushed, shoved, tripped, or spit on. 1 in 5 tweens have been cyberbullied. It's a problem, and it has to stop. Welcome to Bully This, a hero's journey. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Our passion is to show kids that there is life after bullying. You'll hear from former bullies and bullying victims, and you'll hear how they made their journey from troubled youth to successful adults. Welcome to Bully This, a hero's journey. Now your hosts, Tyler Copenhaver Heath and Clifford Starks.
Hello and welcome to Bully This, episode 2. I'm Tyler.
I'm Clifford.
So today I want to start out by talking about immersive experience. We have just begun in the bully dilemma, and already it is so different and so much more impactful than we thought. Talk to the audio guy that did the intro for this podcast, bully victim. Talk to a big online editor, bully victim. Not only is it way more complex, but the issue has evolved completely different than we thought. I think immersion is the key to understanding, but also education. That's why we've invited Jessica DeBoffer. Jessica is the owner and founder of Willowwood Consulting in Mesa, Arizona. She majored in psychology and then went on to a graduate degree in clinical counseling. This part's really cool. While attending graduate school, Jessica spent several years researching psychopathy and conducting research in a Chicagoland jail. She had planned on working with mass shootings after graduation, but when she began her internship, she had a life-altering experience. I'll let her tell you about that. After completing her master's, she was fortunate enough to work under one of the foremost child psychologists in the world. This gave Jessica the opportunity to provide therapy to children, adolescents, teens, and young adults. Jessica was able to get involved with preschools, alternative high schools, and she developed several social, emotional, learning-based groups. But Jessica's had her own experience with bullying. Before entering her freshman year of high school, she was diagnosed with severe scoliosis and had to wear a Boston back brace for several years. Being known as Back Brace Girl was difficult to handle, but even more so when you're dealing with the stretch of the average teenage life. I usually like to get with somebody's mom before the show and ask them some questions about them. Unfortunately, that didn't work this time. But what I can tell you about Jessica is having a back issue may have been caused by the weight of her heart. My interactions with her thus far, she has passion and fire for bullying like someone I've not experienced before. I know very few people that would brave the jail system to work with people that most deem lost. An immersive experience into the worst. But I guess it's best if Jessica tells it. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you on the show.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
So, little different show for episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
So we not only want to hear your hero's journey, because we set up everything in this way, but also we want to get some really good feedback on how we can be the most benefit to the people watching this show, including the kids, obviously, that's who we're doing it for, but also the parents, the bully victims even. So we really want some good insight. And Cliff and I have these motivational things that we use for ourselves. And we want to make sure that we're telling the audience things that they should be utilizing and not steering them wrong. So today we're first going to start, and if you don't mind, the beginning of the journey is the call to action.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for the bully victims, the call to action is the bully.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about the back brace girl and how that affected you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was actually the summer between 8th grade and freshman year. And I was huge into soccer, love soccer, was going to try out for the freshman team, but I had to do my physical. So I go do the physical, they have you bend over, run their finger over your spine. And they said, there's a slight curve there. It's probably nothing. Go get an x-ray. Once you're cleared by the orthopedic, you're good to go. So we made the appointment maybe a week before school started. We go, we get the x-ray. I will never forget it. They turn on the light board. They put that x-ray up there and my spine looks like an S. Wow. And it was so unexpected because even prior to the x-ray, the doctor himself was like, oh yeah, this is fine. You're going to be in and out of here and it'll be all good. So we see this x-ray and we kind of say, what are our options here? His first go-to was, it's so severe, you need the surgery. You need the spinal fusion. Wow. So I was in shock. My mom was was there with me. She was in shock. And we decided, okay, let's go get a second opinion. Second opinion, same thing. You need spinal fusion surgery. Okay, well, we'll try our third opinion. You're going to need spinal fusion surgery. Okay, let's go for a fourth opinion.
Yeah.
We were just going to go until we found the answer that we wanted.
Yeah.
Go to the fourth doctor, and he said, we can try a brace and see if that helps. There's definitely no guarantee. You may spend a year of your life wearing the brace and then end up having to get the surgery anyways. But if you want, we can kind of give it a go and see.
Totally.
So that was the option that we went with. And lucky for me, it worked. I had to wear it for 3 years. So I got fitted my first week of high school, and by the second week, I was in the back brace and wore it my freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. And then at the beginning of my senior year, I was able to finally take it off. And, they did x-rays and said that it actually had straightened out and I can avoid the surgery. But that came along with 3 years of, the back brace girl. For a Boston brace, it's from below your chest all the way to your hip. And so since I was just going into high school, a big part of this too was they had to fit me for this brace. And so the guy who did the molding put some extra hips on there because he's like, you're going to, grow into this and be wearing this for a couple of years.
Wow.
But at the time I was a string bean. So I was like this string bean and then these plastic hips, and it was awful. But yeah, so I was known as the back brace girl. People would go and they would, hit it or tap on it or throw things on it because it's just hard plastic. And so that was kind of the beginning of that bullying journey for me.
Could you see it through your clothing, or was it underneath?
So it was underneath. You could choose. You could wear it over clothing or underneath. Yeah. I tried to get rid of it and camouflage it as much as I could, but those damn hips, that totally gave it away.
Totally.
And then, even easy things like if I, had dropped my pencil or something, I couldn't just lean over and pick it up. I had to actually stand up, bend down, and grab it. So those were things, too, that happened in the classroom that just called more attention to it than I would have liked.
Was there enough people that were helpful around this, or did they more make it harder?
They were. So I feel like I was definitely lucky enough where I had a good group of friends who would stick up for me, and, they embraced the back brace and they added humor to it and made it more fun.
Yeah.
Specifically my biology teacher too. He really stood up for me. There's a lot of times when I'd go to school and I'd have to leave halfway to go to Chicago or Milwaukee for an appointment. And it was usually during his class. And so he would say, hey, remember you have to go to the office to get picked up. And then kids knew where I was going, so they'd start to laugh, and he shut that down. He's like, I don't understand why we're laughing. We're learning about the mitochondria. This is not a laughing matter.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have some allies in that sense.
Good for him.
Nice. Yeah.
Did it keep you from being able to play sports like you wanted to?
So the doctor cleared me. He said that I could play soccer if I wanted to, but kind of one of the effects of the bullying is I just became so self-conscious and my confidence plummeted that I chose not to.
Yeah.
I just was too embarrassed. I didn't want to have to so I was only allowed to take it off for an hour a day.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to use that during my soccer time. I rather would just be, comfortable and at home and relaxed and take it off. And it's actually one of those things that I do regret. I wish I would have stayed with soccer, but just that self-confidence piece kind of made me shy away from it.
Totally. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We talk about how, adolescence is the only time that we want to blend in so bad. Mm-hmm. We're trying to eventually break that mold. Now we all want to be different,
right, right.
In our older years. But when you have something like that, like a back brace that just makes it impossible to be like everybody else, and you're stuck wearing it all the time. And the thing is, if you would have rebelled against it too.
Right. I mean, that, it's funny. My mom to this day, she's like, I'm just so proud of you because you had to wear it. And that's kind of, in my brain, I simplified it as if I don't wear it, I'm getting surgery and I don't want that. So there's no choice here. I'm just going to have to wear it and endure, and whatever happens, happens. But wearing it's not an option, or wearing it's not an option.
It's like hurting your mind, but it's fixing your body.
Right.
So it's this constant rebellion against the two, and so. And good for you for being strong enough mentally to choose to heal your body, because now you get to enjoy your body for the rest of your life. Are you good now?
Yeah. Yep. I went back. So I actually, from 13 all the way up to 21, I had to go in routinely for x-rays just to kind of monitor and make sure. And I had my last x-ray at 22, and they said, at this point, your growth plates are closed. Everything is developed. You're not going to have any issues further on. So it definitely paid off in the end.
And Jessica's about to have a baby.
Yes.
So that's
yeah.
cool.
And that was another thing too. I was like, okay, is this going to impact, being pregnant? And they said, nope, just do your core exercises and you'll be good to go, versus a fusion may have, more implications with it. So
Yeah. I really want to give us enough time to get to the kind of psychological aspect of all this. So we're going to spend a little less time on your journey, but I really do want to hear how this might have helped build you into who you became. Like a lot of times with our guests and, with ourselves, we find that like this kind of painful experience actually was something you could use as a tool if you used it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
To build who you are. How were you able to use this?
So when I was in the back brace early on, like my freshman year, I was still kind of immature, and I actually had the opportunity to join a support group for kids that were in back braces. And I was, no, I don't need that. I'm fine. But as it got to the tail end and I had been wearing it for a couple of years, that's when my mindset started to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to one of the groups and really enjoying it, and kind of saw the power of having that support and having, some adults that are trained in psychology that can kind of help you get through and have a growth mindset. And that was really inspiring. And that's kind of what set off that track of, okay, I want to be in the medical field. And I actually went and did pre-med at first, but then ended up changing to psychology just because that human mind kept coming up and that kept distracting me away from the medical stuff. So that's the route that I ended up taking.
Do you think then, I don't want to forget to miss this, but do you think that community then with the other people that had back brace, that it seems like it was instrumental for you?
Yes. And it was awesome too, because it was a part of the hospital that I was going to. So having that collaborative healthcare was awesome, where they kind of fused, the medical piece of it and the physiological piece with the mental health. So I was able to go do an x-ray and then be able to have that support group in the same facility and not have to, go to all over the place to have these appointments. So it was really, really helpful.
Kids your age in the group?
That's awesome.
So this has been quite a journey, for us. And like it originally starts with watching, the story of Bully, the documentary, and just having such a sense that I almost need to take a flight right now and ride the bus with this kid.
Yeah.
There was just so much frustration. And then it went into, well, maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe it's more around a community, know? And so it sounds like that's what you had with the back brace. And so originally, since Cliff and I have been training partners for years, and our MMA gym is actually some amazing people. And so I thought originally we'll get them in the MMA gyms all over the country. We'll build some confidence.
Right.
But then I realized not everybody's into that. Right. And that's okay. So how much of this could be, because a lot of these kids, like Alex on the bus, he seems really alone.
Right.
How much of these kids getting into a group, something that they're interested in, how much would that benefit them?
Huge. So Yalom is a psychologist who specialized in group therapy, and he has a bunch of factors that contribute to growth and change, and one of them is called universality. And that's that concept of being a part of the group, having some universal experiences that we can all relate to, and kind of that human factor. So being able to relate to somebody on some aspect, it helps to decrease that feeling of loneliness. And when we can decrease that, we feel like, okay, there's some hope here. There's somebody I can connect to. And we know that having hope and having connection are two of the biggest factors in being able to grow and further your mindset.
Where do you think parents, I don't want to, I never want to sound like I'm beating up parents, right? But where could they go better in this aspect? Getting a kid that's always on his own, how could they do their part in getting that kid involved with the community?
So I think the first step is to slow down. I think parents, rightfully so, can be very reactive because they love their kids, they care about them. And so that reactivity can cause them to kind of move forward too quickly. So the first step is to just slow down and then ask. Don't tell your kid and preach, you need to do this, you need to do that. They've heard all of that before.
Sure.
So start more of a dialogue. What are you interested in? What's something that you would like to do? And start asking them and getting them to give you the answers. Because not only does that help you helping them, but it also gives them empowerment and feels like they're in control in a situation where they don't have control.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, if every single time, because like a lot of these kids I'm finding out, they're hiding this from their parents.
Right, yeah.
Because they're embarrassed about it. And usually like dad's place is, hey, just be a man, stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's two different types of people in this. You can't completely bucket them, but you have somebody like Cliff who's always been a big guy. It's just when he was bullied, he couldn't quite see that big guy. So it was almost like he was harnessing himself in his own head. Like he could have stopped the bully.
Right.
What were you at one point? 280 pounds?
Yeah.
There's no way he couldn't have stopped the bully.
Right.
But in his own mind, he was made to believe he wasn't that powerful. But then you get somebody that isn't that powerful.
Right.
You know? And they're never going to be, dad's advice is stand up for yourself.
Right.
I don't mean to give them a way to like step away from this, but like I don't know what good it's going to do to have that kid try to fight somebody that's bigger than them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of, you know, again, parents always have the best of intentions. I don't doubt that. But saying something like, oh, boys will be boys, or, you know, you need to stand up to them, you need to fight back. It just victimizes the kid that's being bullied further, right? So now they feel out of control at school, and then they come home and they feel out of control at home. So now we have two environments that they feel like they're not being heard, they're not being validated, and that just compounds that loneliness and that connection that they don't have now with parents and feeling comfortable enough to go to them.
Because then they're probably hiding it even more from the parents.
Exactly. And again, you know, it's upsetting because, again, the parents, I'm sure, have the best intentions. They hate to see their kid being bullied and they get frustrated with the situation. But 9 times out of 10, we see that frustration being displaced on their kid because that's the only person they have interaction with in that situation. They can't interact with the kid that's bullying theirs, or they can try and go to the school, but they still have to have that professionalism. So that's where the frustration gets displaced.
So they're being so hopeless, they don't even know where to place it, and they're actually double placing it on the kid.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. Do you think, as far as, you know, a kid like, because they get to where they don't even want to share with their parents then, because obviously the results are that. So how do you coach parents to have a better dialogue with them? And then is the problem more towards involvement with community, or is
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about a child who's being bullied, the responsibility lies with the adults around them. I mean, yes, the other child that's bullying them, that's a factor, but a lot of times there's issues going on there as well. Yeah. So it really lies with the parents and the school system to kind of step in and help them. And so I think, like I was saying earlier, you know, asking, not telling, letting the kids speak and encouraging them to speak and giving them that space is going to be huge. And then so a lot of times I tell parents, ask your kid, do you want an ear or do you want an answer? Because as parents, we want to fix everything and solve it. Yeah. But sometimes for kids, they just want to be heard and they want their parent to say, that sucks. I'm really sorry that that's happening to you.
Yeah. And I'm at least there for you.
Yeah.
I'm here, I'm listening.
Sit in that uncomfortable space, as uncomfortable as it is. That's going to be more healing than trying to solve the problem, because as you solve the problem as a parent, again, you're taking control away from your kid. So, and obviously, you know, there's a line there. If it's a huge safety concern, absolutely step in and, you know, try and help. But if they can be autonomous in handling the bully, we want to empower them more than anything.
Yeah. And that's what's so interesting about an immersive experience. We're not completely immersed, but I can tell you that weekly I'm talking to a couple people that have grown up with bullying. So I feel, you know, like I'm getting a lot of good input, and I feel like I'm being immersed into the problem.
Right.
And what I originally, just like anything else in life, we immerse into something and we expect it's this. And they expect very easily, like I did originally, like, oh, we just need to get them into the gym community or whatever. And it's more complex than that. But when we get into immersing into this, what I find is, of course, the kids that are bullying, you know, that in itself is heartbreaking, and you kind of like, you want to be a little mad at them, but you don't know what's behind that. You know, the biggest surprise for me and the biggest new anger is the way some of the adults are treating this. And I don't mean the parents that are aloof and just don't know how to help, but I find that there's a lot of times, you know, I've talked to somebody that's going to be a guest soon, and it's like major people within the school, or even myself, you know, like I had problems with the people at the school too.
Right.
So if we can't even seek help from the school officials because they're part of the bullying problem, how are parents going to correct that behavior? Or how are we going to make them aware? Because there's a problem there too if they're part of the bully problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I had graduated from grad school, I was doing consulting with a bunch of preschools and high schools on exactly what you said, trying to educate, empower teachers and staff to identify bullying. How do you handle it? Because a lot of times, at least in my experience when I was in the classrooms, I would see teasing, see bullying. The teacher would observe it. They would intervene and say, okay, stop. You hurt his feelings. Say sorry. And then the bully apologizes. And then the child that's being bullied is expected to say, that's okay. And that's not okay.
No.
And it's absolutely not okay. That's not the resolution there. And when that happens, time and time again, consistently, we grow up and then we become adults that don't have boundaries because everything is supposed to be okay. You apologize. That's okay. But we don't know, apologizing and saying I'm sorry is just a memorized response, right?
Totally.
They're just words. And then we acknowledge it as okay, and that can set you up for issues later in life. So we would coach teachers on pausing. And again, it takes more time. It takes time away from, the education piece. But this is going to have the longevity of lifelong skills. So it's important to take the time. And if, one kid is taking a toy from another, pausing, kneeling down, getting on their level and saying, hey, look at his face. What do you see his face? How does he feel?
Yeah.
And getting that, like you said, the immersion, right? Immerse them into that experience. There's a program called Conscious Discipline that we would implement in the schools. And we said, discipline, we often think it means punishment, but it actually means to teach. So use those moments to teach.
Yeah.
Don't discipline them. Teach them.
Sure.
How do you navigate this? How do you apologize and mean it? How do you increase their awareness so that this isn't being replicated?
Is part of the problem, and I don't want to involve the school dilemma too much, but there is complexity in everything, right?
Yes.
And that's why immersion is good. I almost think that senators, anytime they enact, some sort of bill or funding or anything else, they should have to go immerse into
absolutely.
it. Because I find the more I immerse into something, I was telling you guys before the show, like I hated kill shelters. Absolutely hated them. I'm such an animal lover. I couldn't understand, how we had kill shelters in this world, and they, I was horrified by them. But that made me want to go in and find out about it. Right. So I went in and I volunteered in the clinic there for about 2 years. And what I found was completely different than what I thought. And what it is basically these kill shelters are the last stop in the road for animals. There is nowhere else for them to go. So we praise a no-kill shelter, and nothing against them. All these people have hearts for animals, but when they're shutting the door because they're full, where do they go?
Right.
So we're all putting the needle in the dog, no matter what. And what I found out there too, bunch of animal-loving people. I spent over a year there, and I realized that these people truly cared about animals and had no desire. Completely different than I thought before I immersed into it.
Right.
So it seems to me the key to understanding education and everything else is to immerse first. You have to find out where the problems are. Do you think that the teachers, they're immersed in it, so why aren't they understanding it?
So I feel for the teachers. I think there's a lot of different factors. They have a lot of different curriculums that they have to implement. They have scores they have to monitor. They have to educate. They have to do classroom management. They have to do their own paperwork and attendance. Plus, there's funding issues. There's so much stress on teachers that it's almost unrealistic to expect them to be able to handle, these bullying incidents and be able to knock it out of the park every time.
Completely. Yeah.
I hate to say it, but, money is an issue. Having these training programs and coming in and doing the consultation and empowering the teachers, it costs money. And a lot of times it's just not in the budget. They're so focused on the grades and the academics because at the end of the day, that's what gets them the grants and the funding for the school.
Well, and they're overworked and underpaid anyways. So it comes down to reward systems at the same time, like you're saying, and I never want to sound like I'm bagging on teachers at all. And absolutely not. I'm just trying to understand more and more. I'm not immersing into the actual school, how we can all help. And it sounds like we all know teachers are overworked.
Oh, absolutely.
And now we're giving them this. To me, is one of the biggest problems too,
Right.
because of the collateral impact in a negative way that it can cause. You
Yep.
know, we don't even need to mention some of the worst people in the world and some of the worst tragedies in the world we can probably tie to bullying.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, they're overworked. They're expected to be teachers, parents, nannies, nurses, everything. And now we want them to be psychologists on top of it. And they need more resources, or at least have more counselors available so that they can kind of take some of that burden off of the teacher's workload.
Yeah. I love how you talk about having the empathy to like sit down and say, okay, what's happening with this?
Right.
And as I've taken the entrepreneur journey, it's like taking someone else's problem and making it your own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when we can figure out, okay, how do we attach this story to when these kids grow up, things are happening.
Right.
Suicide goes up
Yep.
when
Yeah.
certain things happen.
Yeah.
Like people are losing people.
Right.
And how would you feel if this was happening to your kid, making it really, really real for people? Because when it's real, when they can
Yes.
see it, we start looking for solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 1,000%. And that's, it's interesting. I say funny lightly, but, to prompt a child to look at another child who's crying and say, I want you to look at them. What's happening with their eyes? What's happening with their mouth? They're frowning. They're crying. Having them actually look at the facial expression, that teaches them that empathy too, and being able to identify emotions in other people, which empathy is huge to combating bullying. So when you get them to actually pay attention and you can direct them, you see a huge shift in how they approach it in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
I almost would think like if there could be a class for something like
Yes,
that.
yeah.
Where because we have our curriculum. It's like, okay, we got math, we got science. And
Right.
they even tried getting like, oh, we're getting rid of PE because that's not very
Right.
important. And I'm like, wait, let's step
Yeah.
back a little bit and say like, I'm not saying just cut things and add
Right.
things, but let's look at the bigger picture
Yes.
and say, hey, what's going on and how do we fix this thing?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see that a little bit, especially in the last 20 years or so. So social emotional learning, or SEL curriculums, have definitely become more popularized, but they're still not at the level that they need to be, just because, again, it's school-wide implementation, it's the money, it's the training, it's the time and everything. So we're starting there, but there's a long path to go until we kind of get to where it needs to be.
Yeah. It seems like there's obviously a lot of work there, but the work is worth it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's why I even name drop like the government a little bit, because it's like we're looking into different steps in the path, and we're almost trying to solve this problem way too far down the path.
Right.
Because then we're dealing with it as a societal level. We're dealing with incarcerations. We're dealing with, I don't even like bringing up some of the worst things that
Right.
can happen because we all know. And so if not there, so we've talked about things that they could do and resources that they have. But if not there, we didn't save this last kid as far as keeping him from being bullied, because teachers are overworked, because, his circumstances at home, whatever. What can we do to help this kid with what's happened? And that's a lot of what this show is attempting to do too, is show people, okay, these were bully situations that happened, for whatever reason. Somebody, like, teachers weren't prepared. It's not on them. Parents weren't prepared. It's not on them. It's not on the kid. It's not totally on the bullied kid either, and so it happens. Right. And so is it okay? Because we find that, like, the people that this has happened to, like, their frameworks are awesome mentally.
Right.
For, how they built themselves afterwards. And that's why we have a whole boatload of guests in the future that can come in and talk about how they were bullied and how they're doing amazing stuff, because it almost built them.
Right.
So is it bad to tell these kids, like, hey, this painful thing happened to you, like, use it as motivation? Is it bad to tell people that they can use pain for their future motivation and benefit?
No, I mean, I don't think it's bad. I think, everybody's different. Some people will use their pain. Some people find, strength in other avenues. But I think it's definitely something that they can use to kind of advocate for themselves. If mom and dad aren't listening, or if the teachers aren't listening, I hate to put more of a burden on the kid that's being bullied, but try and find, a role model, whether it's a professional athlete or it's an actor or a politician.
Sure.
Find somebody that you identify with, even if you can't, have that face-to-face, physical contact with them, and look at those traits that you aspire to be and try and challenge yourself. And again, that's a lot to ask for a kid, right? Especially a kid that's not being bullied, let alone one that is.
Yeah.
But I think having that connection and trying to advocate for yourself is the biggest piece of that.
Yeah.
And how do you say that from, let's say we could get kids to listen to this
Mm-hmm.
show. How can you say that from a way that a kid right now, 11 years old, he's afraid to ride the bus tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
What can we tell that kid? Because it's hard for him to understand, like, hey, I
Right.
promise you this sucks right now,
Right,
but
right.
you're going to use it and you're going to kill it. You know,
Right.
like you are absolutely going to do something heroic and amazing.
Right.
That's why we got to get you through this, because you are the people that change the world.
Right.
What do we tell them right now?
So we'd validate. That's, I think the biggest invalidating thing that we can do is try and change their experience that's happening right now. So if we say like, oh, again, it's good to give them hope, but it has to be balanced. So if saying like, it's not that bad right now, like it's going to be great later on.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I feel bad right now. So are you telling me that that's wrong? So
Yeah.
validating them where they're at and saying, hey, I know you don't want to go on the bus tomorrow. It's a terrible experience. I get that. It's another day though. And if we can try and push through tomorrow, it might be better the next day. And it's going to be good and it's going to be bad, but we know that good and bad have to come together, right? Because that's what makes us feel those opposites. So it's instilling that hope and just validating them where they're at.
You know why these kids grow up to be something so cool?
Why is that?
Is because, in my opinion, for what it is because some people never have to face fears in life half as much as that kid's feeling getting on that bus.
Absolutely.
And when you've approached that, because they might as well, like some of the most horrific things we've ever heard of trying to face, in their mind, they're facing it. Right then.
Yep.
And then when they get past that, they've overcome it, they use that, you know?
sure.
And like that's why they do amazing stuff. That's why they have no problem being a doctor and putting the time commitment into that. That's why they have no problem, like being a senator and like putting all the time and commitment into that.
Right.
They're razor focused.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how much is proving people wrong a bad thing when it comes to your own psychology in building yourself?
No, I think that's a wonderful thing. I know we were talking earlier before the show about paradoxical interventions, right? So it's almost kind of like, you're going to tell me that I'm a loser, you're going to pick on me, like I'm going to show you, right?
Yeah,
So for some people that is a huge driving force and it can definitely work. For some other people, they may have more, less resilience and that might kind of double down on the negativity. So it just kind of depends on the person that we're speaking to.
And that's what's so
that.
scary to me too, because I see almost, especially through this, two paths, right? It's like, and I feel like my own was close to this.
Okay.
It's like one path has you go off. You're believing this stuff. Like I was told as a kid, like I was stupid. And so I believed it for a long time. And this path almost went exactly where they kind of wanted to.
Right.
And so what I want to get across too is like, don't do this. This like little like, hey, almost like daring you, if that's what my teachers were doing.
Right.
And I don't actually think they were doing that. I think they truly felt that way.
Right.
They didn't like me for some reason. But don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't use that as a tool. Like, hey, like you're never going to amount to nothing,
Right.
because to me, it's too dangerous.
Yeah, it's on that line. For some people, it can be just that push they need to kind of fight back. But like you said, for other people, that may just compound their negativity even more.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be careful and just be, intuitive on kind of, parents know their kids the best. Or you have a kid that's a little bit more introverted, a little bit more anxious, shy, quiet, that might backfire for them. But if you have a kid who's more outspoken, more bold, that may be the extra push that they need. So it just depends.
Yeah, because to me, that's so scary. It's like then they go the wrong path so easily.
Right.
I mean, some of us use it to build ourselves. We get to the point where like, going to show them wrong.
Right, absolutely.
And then like, and then you can get a good foundation of building.
Yep.
And my thing is, and we talk about this on almost every show, and I want to mention it here, not to be redundant, but I want to run it by you. Like, painful thing happens in life. It sucks, and like really bad, unspeakable things.
Right.
But if it's going to happen, I don't see the problem with using that as a fuel for your fire.
Right.
It's happened to you. It's part of you now.
Yep.
Like use it
Yeah.
if it's going to propel you to greatness.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, we have to, like you said, we have to face situations in life that are either going to be really enjoyable or really tough. But regardless of which way it goes, we're going to learn something. We're going to get some data, and that's going to help us grow. So if that's the silver lining that we can focus on, at least let that be the one positive and the one kind of optimistic piece of it.
Totally.
Yeah. And you mentioned validating, one step at a time. And I want to ask you, so you went through looking through the lens of understanding people in incarceration to younger kids, and you saw a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so where did you see that pattern where it's like, oh crap, this is something that when they get here, this happens, and then that leads to that. And what's the switch? What's the default that we could have for it?
Yeah, I think a big piece of it is just that, being pushed out of, the in-group, right? So there's bullying that happens, or there's an unstable family life at home. And for, whatever reason, those factors are happening. And the child starts to become isolated. They start to withdraw. They don't feel like they have connections to people. They become pessimistic about their future. And a lot of times that's what I heard from the inmates that I would interview with. And what they had said was, I turned to gangs because I felt like I had a built-in family. They cared about me. They always had my back. But then that also led to a life of crime and ended up in the imprisonment.
Yeah.
And it's scary. When I did start working in the schools, I would hear the same thing from the kids. Well, nobody's my friend. I don't have anybody to talk to. I'm not going to be anything when I grow up. And it's very scary to hear that same report from an adult man and a 5-year-old boy. So that's
kidding.
where we see those patterns happening.
Well, and to a gang, that's just like ripe fruit on the vine, right? They're like, oh man, this kid's on his own. I'm going to capture this.
Absolutely.
And the next thing you know, they're shooting somebody.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I went to, as I've lived and experienced and gone through the journey, and I had a weird epiphany. And this is just for me through my lens, where I'm like, holy crap, we're all the same.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting there like, we're all the same. Now, some people may be more bold, more courageous.
Right.
Some people shy or more like, those are characteristic traits, but we all want the tools and the resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, when we have the tools and the resources and the systems to use those tools and the resources, everyone can win.
Yeah.
And so I get excited, and I know Tyler's like, but it can go either way. Like it can go the other way too. And I'm like, yeah. I'll say it is on all of our backs.
Yeah.
Like I can't, that's me. That's how I show up. I'm like, the parents have to take responsibility. I have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
We all have to take responsibility. It's on us. But when we hold hands together, it's on us.
Yes.
Like now we're taking our power back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, that's the biggest thing too, is for a kid seeing that everybody's on the same page and rallying for them, and they're also empowered in that process. That is the ultimate validation, right?
Totally.
I have parents that are hearing me. I have teachers that are hearing me. They're listening. They're believing me. They're validating me. And now we're going to take action so that this doesn't keep happening.
Yeah. Are you familiar, and I won't bring it back up for the redundancy of the show, but there's kind of this analogy of sheepdog, wolf, sheep.
Yeah.
Okay. How much in the world do things change if we're building more sheepdogs? It seems to me, and this is a question from kind of immersing into it, it seems to me that third party, like if you can build more of that third party, that sheepdog that's going to like step in and say, hey, I'm not saying beat him up. I'm just saying step in and say, hey, why are you picking on this kid?
Right.
Some kid that's full of confidence out there right now. It almost feels like you have some more of those in the world and things change.
Yeah, no, that's a huge factor in bully prevention is, typically a bully, they will back down if they feel like they're outnumbered or if they feel like there's more people on this side. So if you can have kids and we can empower them and teach them and educate them, hey, if you see something, say something or step in. Again, there has to be guidance on that, right? We don't want to, pull somebody in if they have a fear of stepping in, and we don't want to subject them to bullying either. But there is strength in numbers, and there is strength in connection and allyship. So I think that's definitely something that would be helpful in kind of reducing the bullying in the future.
So Cliff has kids, and your oldest son's Tyson, and look who his dad is.
Yeah.
And so I would guess he's going to grow up to have a lot of confidence.
Right.
He's going to grow up if he wants to get into boxing and things like that. His dad's going to teach him. To me, he is the perfect kid to be growing up and being a sheepdog, and Cliff's not the kind of guy that's going to be happy if his son's a bully.
Right.
I don't see his son being the bully. So how does Cliff raise a sheepdog?
So I think just education, sitting down and having those topics. And again, I know I keep repeating it, but ask, don't tell. So saying like, hey, like, what is it like at school with friends? Is there bullying that happens? What does that look like? Is it, is it social bullying? Is it emotional? Is it physical? Is it cyberbullying? And kind of getting that information and just saying, have you seen it? What have you done when you've seen that? Do you step in? Do you not? What makes you step in? What doesn't make you step in? And let the kid tell you where they're at. Yeah. And then the more information you know, then that's when you can kind of start to guide them. Because they may say, well, I didn't step in because, I was afraid that he was going to retaliate. Okay. Was there another option that we could have done maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess I could have went to the teacher. Well, maybe we can try that next time. And just giving them that encouragement. But I would definitely say let the kid lead that conversation through your structured questionings.
So that was a great question. And I want to say this. Every day I ask my son, hey, did you have fun today? What did you have fun with? Because it's so important. And each generation's learning from each other generation. Like sometimes we were taught to pour into the cup. Right. But if the cup's not ready to be poured into, it's not gonna go in. Right. But I also ask my son, or I say, I'm going to be the best dad and you're going to be the best oldest son today. You want to do that? Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we should strive for, right? Yeah. Always being the best version of ourselves, but also having that flexibility that some days are going to be off. We're not going to have good days, and that's okay too, as long as that consistency of the mindset of I'm always going to try to be the best that I can be. That's the biggest piece. And I do think that's important too when it comes to kind of that sheepdog analogy. We want to make sure that we're balancing it. We're not putting too much pressure, on our kids to advocate against bullying, because then that may kind of make them crumble of like, oh my gosh, I have to do something every single time. And if I
don't want to get them in trouble either.
And I'm going to feel guilty. So it's, if you feel like it's appropriate and you're confident enough and you can do it, then definitely do it, buddy. Yeah. If not, and you're having a hard time, but you still want to make a difference, just come to me and we can kind of figure it out. That way they don't have that too much pressure.
I'm sorry. I'm really getting into this one. I love the balance.
Yes.
Like when I say we're all coming together and holding hands, like, Cliff, you're squeezing a little too tight. Can you let go a little bit? Like, oh, okay, sorry. Like, oh, you're not squeezing. You can squeeze a little bit tighter. Right. Yeah. Oh, this is perfect. Like it's the organic flow of figuring out like, look, we're in this and we're doing the best that we got. Yeah. But thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing that's like interesting to me is we all want to be like Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's paying attention to what the Kardashians are doing, right. And everybody's paying attention to what, like the kids are loving, the Marvel stuff these days. And we've done a really good job. Hollywood, I'll say this, you've done a really good job in making bullying not cool.
Right.
Like we are really on the same page as a world about bullying's not cool.
Thank you, Captain America.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So why, when usually we can look at the source of what we're looking up to, why is bullying still a thing when we've made it so uncool?
So bullying, just like, again, I know this is kids, but like drinking, drug use, overeating, it's a maladaptive coping mechanism. So for some, they're not thinking of it as, I'm intentionally being mean to somebody to cause them emotional pain. That's not typically the thought process that's happening. It's, I feel out of control in my life, so the way that I'm going to gain control is by kind of picking on somebody, and I can kind of decide how intense I want to go on that. So it's not thought of as intentionally inflicting harm, even though it seems silly because it's so obvious that it is. It's a way of that kid, for some people, it's a way for them to feel a sense of control and kind of have control in a life that is uncontrollable for them.
And it's like, it's kind of like, you almost want to tell the bully, like, hey, you're the bad guy here, dude. Right. You are the bad man. Like I'm trying to think of a Marvel comic bad guy. You are him, but I guess you can't really do that either.
No.
Well, I'll tell you, Jessica, this is how awesome you are, because I freaking love you. And this is why. I'm reading a book on $100 million offer.
Okay.
Right? Now, I'm going to tie this back in because they're like, how does bullying and $100 million offer, how does this connect? We attack things with psychology, not logic.
Yes.
every single time. And it took me time to figure that out. As a personal trainer, I'm like, all right, I'm going to change the world. Everyone's going to get healthy. Like I'm going to figure out how to get people healthy. And then I'm going to tell them how amazing it feels to be healthy. And I got out there and I'm like, swing and a miss. Like, no one's listening.
There was an effort.
You're just like, all right, maybe the sign's not right. Let me put it on the right side, like crickets. Yeah. And then I realized, oh, well, when I make it important to them, when I can bring up the quality, when I bring up their dream, it's their dream.
Yeah.
Like, I want my kids to grow up to be amazing.
Right.
And I know I need people like you to support them, for them to be as amazing as they possibly can be. It's those things we do in the moment that our future self will thank.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And I go like, how do I get my future self to thank me?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it even comes down to like something like giving your kids the right nutrition. You know, they want candy, but what they need to eat is chicken,
Right.
you know, especially like epigenetically, it is so important in their younger years that they have good nutrition, you know, and it's like what coping skills, what mental, this thing's way more powerful than these, you know, like this thing can do anything. You'll pull a car off your kid in the right circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's almost like, you know, the focus really needs to be on like how you can use that brain power, you know, it's like, you see the kid like Alex Libby get on the bus. It's like, I'll bet he's amazing at something.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I don't know what it is. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about it. Maybe I'll get the chance someday, but I'll bet he's amazing at something.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it feels like if you could get him involved with that something and he finds a community, then he's not siloed. Because what I'm getting out of this today especially is silo is bad.
Yes.
You know, I realize people have accomplished really good things on their own, but in this case, when they're kids, we need to get them out of that silo.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, they say Daniel Goleman, he's an expert in social emotional and emotional intelligence. And he's written a lot of books about IQ versus EQ. So your intelligent quotient versus your emotional quotient. And he's shown that the emotional quotient a lot of times is actually more important in life than how intelligent you are, because you can be the smartest person in the room. If you can't, you know, be aware of your emotions, manage yourself, interact with other people, you're not going to be successful. I mean, we're social beings. We rely on each other. Even if you're just going to you can live alone. You still have to go to the grocery store. You still have to pay bills and, you know, do taxes. And that requires interacting with people.
Well, and it's a good thing because we don't want those type of people to be successful, really, because we want people to be successful that are also empathetic.
Absolutely.
You know? So if you get a robot in power, and I can name a couple CEOs that I think are like that right now.
We won't name names.
Yeah. I mean, that's a problem. You know, they need more of the emotional side, you know, so they realize like they have real impact on the world.
Well, and that's one of the hard balances that we're finding is, like you said, a lot of CEOs have similar psychopathy to inmates, because you not having empathy, you can fire people, you can cut wages, you don't care.
Yeah.
What do you care? It doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. You have to find that balance of, you know, you need empathy and you can still be successful with empathy.
Yeah. And actually, that's a great point, because being in business and a bunch of different businesses over the years, that's been one of my hardest parts is because I have too much loyalty, you know, and I hate firing somebody because I don't think about it firing and being good for the company. I think about it more like the poor guy's got a family, you know, like what's he going to do for money next week, you know, and that's a detriment to the company.
Right.
But you have to get down, and that's what I've learned after years of being in business. You have to get to the point where you can't help anybody if your business isn't successful.
Right.
You got more people that count on you. You have to be there for them too. They can't have somebody that's their teammate that's not pulling their weight.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so
it all comes back to balance.
Totally. Yeah.
And I look at things as energy, right? And so our dollars are energy.
Yeah.
And we say like, okay, where are we spending our dollars, and why are we spending our dollars with what we're spending it?
Right.
Totally.
And that's where I go like, hey, this is more of an internal game than an external game. Really just saying like, what is it that I'm doing and how is it showing up for the society?
Right.
Well, we vote with two things: our money and our attention.
Yep.
You know, today when you go out and start watching social media or whatever, who are you giving your attention to? Because that's more important than money in my mind, because it is a moment of your life.
Yeah, it is.
And you only have so much of that. So how are you spending your time and what are you putting in your brain and
Right.
how is that
100%.
affecting your outcomes?
And even tying that into, the parenting, I'll tell parents, we are primed to catch the bad, but do you ever catch your kid being good? How often do you hear parents say, hey, buddy, you're sitting really nicely at the dinner table?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody says that. They say, hey, sit down. You're eating, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So again, it's what you're watching, what you're giving your attention to is going to be reinforced. So try and look at the positives. If your kid is watching TV, comment, and they're sitting nicely and they're being quiet, comment on that. If they're doing their homework without being asked to, comment on that. That's going to reinforce their positive behavior. It's going to help their self-esteem and their confidence. And it's also going to help bolster that connection between family.
Yeah.
It's funny. So like training a puppy, which we're doing right now, it's like you're so succinct with what you're telling them is good and bad.
Right.
It's like, because you have to.
Yep.
And I'm not saying and they're intelligent. Like
Right.
dogs are extremely intelligent, loyal. I love them, and I'm not saying like treat your kid like a dog, but
Right.
it sounds like
There is.
we're emotionally intelligent more with our animals than our
Right.
kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we do, we tell kids too, hey, stop that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And then what's the flip of that? You have to tell them what you want them to do then.
Sure.
If you tell them, hey, don't put tinfoil in the microwave, it's like, well, why
Why?
the hell not? I want to find out what's
Yeah.
going to happen, right?
Yeah.
You have to tell them what you need them to do too. We only give them half an instruction, not the full instruction.
Totally.
So true. Yeah.
What's so interesting about your journey is you've made this, I've been bullied, and you've made it like you get to cause collateral impact actually in a subject that affected you. I mean, how does that make you feel?
It's awesome. I love working with kids. It's my favorite thing. And it's, I think having those experiences, like you were saying, having gone through it and then being able to have that collateral kind of experience, it makes you even more passionate because I try to empathize with everybody, even if I haven't, if I haven't been an alcoholic or if I haven't been abused, I can still have empathy, but it's really taken to that next level when somebody's gone through what you've gone through. And I think it helps that connection too. I try and connect with all my clients the best I can, but when we have that commonality of the bullying or not feeling like you're listened to by the adults in your life, you can really feel, like you were saying, Cliff, with the energy, you can just feel that positive energy and you can feel them trusting you and listening to you. And then you get to guide them. And it's the coolest thing.
Do you tell them about the back brace girl?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You're supposed to use self-disclosure, kind of sparingly, but you use it in a clinical sense. If you think it's going to be a benefit to your client, then absolutely use it. And, 10 times out of 10, it is a benefit because they see me as somebody that they can trust, that they can look up to, that they listen to for guidance. And like we're doing with the podcast, if I can say, hey, I happened, they go, really? To you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
Totally.
How did you get through it? And you can see that excitement of like, wow, somebody that I like and that I respect has gone through that same thing. That's pretty cool.
So in a way, Bully This's mission of awareness and hope is actually beneficial to the audience.
Absolutely. Like we said earlier, that connection piece, if even one kid can connect with one of the guests that you have and say, hey, they're kind of like me, they were a little shy or maybe he's a little bit bold. Just having that universality makes such a big difference of saying, I'm not alone.
Yeah. And I just want to give you a chance before we close up. What do you got going on right now?
So right now I am seeing clients under Willowwood Counseling. You can go to willowwoodcounseling.com, sign up for a session if you're interested. I'm also opening to doing consultations with school as well for the social emotional. That's definitely where my passion lies. So
That's
you can
awesome.
email me directly, jessica@willowwoodcounseling.com.
I hope some people take you up on that, especially the schools.
Yeah,
I think that
absolutely.
would be really beneficial and helpful. You've been amazing.
Thank you.
And more so, I'm glad because I don't want to be ever steering anybody wrong, and like we want to be helpful, not, detrimental.
Yep.
And I'm glad to hear that we're, tracking some things that can be
Yeah,
helpful.
no, you guys
to
are
people.
doing great stuff with this. And I definitely think it's going to make a huge impact.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to give you a high five because you're freaking amazing.
Thank you.
I say I talk about reading energy. I
Yep.
can read your energy, and you have amazing energy.
Thank
She
you.
does. Absolutely, she does. Anything else you got?
That's it. Let's keep believing in ourselves,
Yep.
believing in our journey. And just like she said, validating,
Yep.
like life's hard and can be really, really tough.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And we go, okay, if we just take one step at a time, one
Totally.
step at a time.
So super thankful to Jessica for coming on the show today. We've got more coming up. We're doing a lot of filming this month. So Jessica's episode will be out in a couple weeks. You'll see that first after the initial release. And then we'll have several more in the works. You've been great. And thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone.
You've been listening to Bully This, A Hero's Journey. The effects on kids that are bullied are many. Increased risk for depression, anxiety, sleep difficulties, lower grades, and dropping out of school. It's a real problem, and that's why we created this show. We're acutely aware of the pain, shame, and damage that bullying causes, and our passion is to help kids and families to know that there is always help, that there is always a solution. We hope you've gotten some useful information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Facebook at Bully This, A Hero's Journey. Take care, and we'll see you next time.